To suggest that we as Americans are busy would be a massive understatement. The average American runs from one thing to the next, having little time to breathe, let alone time to actually rest. Our jobs are demanding. Employers expect that we are efficient and that we do more than our share of the workload as a sign of solidarity with the organization. We take on extra responsibilities at work so that we can be seen as good employees and position ourselves, hopefully, for the next raise or promotion. We arrive at home after a long day's work to find family responsibilities hanging over our heads. Perhaps our children need a ride to practice or rehearsal. We volunteer at their school to show we're a good parent and that we support the school. We run errands in the evening to make sure we have groceries in the fridge and oil in the car and clothes in our back and light bulbs in the ceiling. We make dinner frantically, hoping to have a few minutes with loved ones and not feel like we're terribly disconnected from one another. Perhaps after dinner we check our work email, collapse in front of the television, and spend the last waking minutes catching up on Game of Thrones or America's Got Talent, or if you're up for torture, the evening news. And then at some point, we fall asleep, only to wake up the next morning and do it all over again. We tell ourselves that with the weekend, we'll finally find some rest. Maybe we don't set the alarm and we get to sleep an hour or two past our weekday wake-up time. But the truth of the matter is, most of us live at the same chaotic pace on our days off as we do during the week. Projects around the house and in the yard call our name. Commitments with our communities of faith demand time, energy, and resources. We want to do something fun, so we catch a game or go to a movie, enjoy a nice meal at a restaurant. Perhaps we have friends over, go on a long walk or a bike ride. But before we know it, in an instant, we lie in bed on Sunday evening, oftentimes just as tired as we were on Friday evening. And we wonder, where in the world did our weekend go? And how will we have enough energy to get through this next week? Not too far off, am I? Even if we have pockets of rest here or there, for the most part, our lives are dictated by the to-do list that is never ending and always calling for our attention. In addition, most of us live with a massive need to produce more and more, and that the decision to stop, to slow down, and to do nothing feels like a betrayal of our need to get things done. We are afraid others will think we are lazy, or not committed, or not invested. One of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott, tells this great story of walking along the wharf in San Francisco with her son, Sam, who was a young child at the time. Anne is in a hurry to make a radio interview. She wants to be on time, and Sam is not feeling the same sense of urgency that his mother feels. He's distracted, he's slow, he's dawdling along as young children often do. As she attempts to hurry him along, she loses her grip on the big tote she's carrying, and its contents dump out all around them. She's frantic, she's frustrated, and she's angry. She's worried they'll be late. And Sam, seeing all this take place, chastises her. He says, "Mom, you're moving too fast and you're carrying too much." This pretty much sums up the American life, doesn't it? A way of life to which, by the way, most Christians are subject. And what we're learning is that in spite of our capacity to keep going and doing more and more, in spite of all that we are able to accomplish and acquire, people continue to report higher levels of anxiety and exhaustion, lower levels of satisfaction and contentment. In other words, while we have a greater capacity to accomplish, acquire, and produce in our lives, we are consistently less and less fulfilled and grounded. One of the contributing factors is that we as humans weren't made to operate at this pace. We weren't made to go and go minute after minute, moving from one item on our to-do list to the next. In the story of the Hebrew people, one of the earliest commandments that God gave to the Israelites after he had rescued them from slavery in Egypt and began leading them through the desert towards the promised land was this: remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Or to put it another way, remember the Sabbath and keep it set apart. Keep this day different from the others. And this isn't because God likes to hand down arbitrary rules to creation. It's because if we run at a constant breakneck speed, we will eventually do what we know is inevitable. We will break down. Farmers know this. If you don't give the soil a break, if you don't rotate crops and eventually give the land a season to replenish itself, a season to rest, your crops will suffer. And the same is true for us. I mean, think about the gift that this was to the Israelites coming out of slavery. Every day in Egypt was a day of work. Every day they were expected to make more and more with fewer and fewer resources given to them. Having been rescued from this way of life, God lays out for them how life under God's reign is different from that of Pharaoh's reign. Remembering the Sabbath and keeping it holy, keeping it set apart, isn't seen as a burden, it's a gift. You mean I don't have to work 7 days a week? I get a day of rest? My animals get a day of rest? My servants get a day to rest? And this is a gracious gift. For in God's economy, we are no longer defined by what we produce, or manage, or acquire. Or as Eugene Peterson puts it, in Sabbath, we are reminded that we are not human doings, we are human beings. And for some of us, we might need this gift because the demands are too much, and we seldom, if ever, get a break. Sabbath becomes a welcome break from the demands of our week. But for some of us, we might need this gift because somewhere along the way, our identity became rooted by what we can accomplish, not who we are. But for those of us who fall in this category, learning how to rest is threatening. It's threatening because we don't know who we are apart from the work that we do. We also learn in Sabbath what it means to make room for others. It's not just the Israelites who get a rest, all of creation does. So, we take a break in order to learn how to be more interruptible, to not be a slave to our to-do list, but rather to learn to be more present to others. In Sabbath, we practice what it means to free up our own resources in order to help those who don't have the freedom to take a break. Okay, let's be honest. This is really hard work. We do not feel like we have the disposable time to take a rest, right? Taking a morning or an afternoon to rest feels highly unlikely, let alone taking one whole day, which feels impossible. But here's why it's so important to do the difficult work of Sabbath. First, as I've already said, it's better for you. You will be more rested, more centered. You will find you have time for things in your life that are more life-giving. Sabbath rest allows you to pay better attention to your own emotional landscape. For when you remove all the noise of projects and technology and work, you're often left with just yourself. And while this can be painful for some, it does allow you to attend to that which you might keep buried. So, first things first, you will be better off. But secondly, all those things to which you give your attention, your work, your family, your faith community, your neighborhood, your spouse, your partner, your child, your loved ones, and the list goes on and on. Out of Sabbath rest, you will actually be able to give more of yourself to these things and these people because you'll be more grounded and more centered and more rested. So even if it feels like you're neglecting these things, you're actually attending to them with greater passion, care, and intentionality because you're able to give your full self to them, not some fragmented, frazzled, and exhausted version of yourself. Finally, in Sabbath rest, you're far more likely to discover those things that you actually care about. I've spent a good deal of time with people who are in their last days. And it doesn't matter whether they're people of faith or not. You never hear someone who is about to die say things like, "Boy, I really wish I would have worked more," or "If only I had watched more television," or "If only I'd finished the projects around the house," "If only I'd put just a few more hours of overtime in for the organization." You know what they say, right? I wish I had just one more day with my family. I wish I could sit across the table and share one more meal with my friends. I wish I could sit on a porch with a cup of coffee with my spouse and rock in our chairs one more time. We don't even have to say anything. These are the things people wish they had given more of their time to. And Sabbath creates the space for this very thing. So where does one begin? The Sabbath traditionally begins at sundown on Friday and goes to sundown on Saturday, during which time you don't work, you don't cook, you don't use technology. Depending on the stream in Judaism, there are a whole bunch of different rules and regulations that flow out of that. And I'm not going to suggest you have to do that, but I would suggest pick one block of time a week, and it doesn't matter what day it is. Perhaps it's a 4-hour block in the morning, or an afternoon, or an early evening, and simply rest. Don't watch television. Don't get on your computer. Don't do work, either the work for which you get paid or work around the house. Drink a cup of coffee. Go on a walk. Sit in your favorite chair and journal. Spend time with a spouse or child or good friend. And here's what I invite you to do. Try it once, and then do it again the next week. And you will most likely find that absolutely nothing spectacular happens. You might even find it boring and a complete waste of time. But I guarantee you that with time, you'll find yourself longing for that block of time every week. You'll find yourself grateful for that moment in your week where you're no longer defined by what you produce or accomplish. You'll find yourself with greater capacity to invest in your work, in your family, in your community, precisely because you've learned how to rest from them. And you'll find yourself more attuned to the things, and in particular, the people you really care about. Sam was right. We move too fast and we carry too much. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can do the difficult work of Sabbath, and in this work, the world becomes a clear reflection of God's intent for it.